Hey folks, this is Justin from the Leonidas Knives and Gear channel. I have with me here today the MAMU field knife by Sniper Bladeworks. And what's really neat about this knife is it is a demo knife, and this will not be the final product. It's part of a Kickstarter campaign for Sniper Bladeworks. They have relaunched the company for this year of 2020, and this MAMU knife is part of that new 2020 lineup. So I'm really excited to be a part of this, and any links to the Kickstarter campaign will be down below in the description box of this video and any videos related to the Sniper Bladeworks MAMU. And in fact, this particular video is the full review of the MAMU knife, which means this is going to be more like my talking video. I'm going to give you some of the basic specifications of this knife. We'll take a close-up look of it. I'll talk about what I like about this knife and maybe anything that I didn't like. And what's really neat is I'm going to make some minor suggestions and possible minor changes to this knife, and we might see some of that in the final product. So that's really cool. I've never been a part of a Kickstarter campaign, so this is definitely something new to me, but I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I will go ahead and say that I had a really good time working with this knife. It's a pretty robust, sturdy field knife, and you'll get to see all that testing footage separately from this review
quickly
video.
Take a look at the box that came with the MAMU knife, and actually really good looking packaging. I will say it's like a cardboard, almost like a paper. It's kind of thin, but I do not know if this is what the final look of it is going to be, the final material. It's interesting, it has the 2020 reload demo unit on there. Also basic information about the MAMU background, which is really neat. You're welcome to pause the screen and read that. I'm not going to read the whole bit out loud, but yeah, it looks really cool. So as for the knife and sheath itself, I'm going to quickly just talk about the sheath or sheath system. And it does not appear to be a Kydex type sheath. It looks like it's more of an injection molded plastic type, which is fine. And you can see the locking tabs in there. I'll go ahead and say one thing I really like that you don't see on a lot of production knife sheaths, even that are Kydex, is a really nice and comfortable thumb ramp with actual jimping. That is super nice. That is a really, really smooth way to get the knife out, and it locks in really well. But yeah, you rarely see a nice thumb ramp in a production knife like that, so I really like that, and I'm sure that will stay. That's a great feature. But it's a good looking sheath overall. Got plenty of the Chicago eyelets on there, so multiple ways you could mount this. It comes with this Tech Lock style. It's more of like a belt loop style. I don't believe it would work with your Molly gear on the PALS webbing, but I could be wrong. Obviously it will work great on a belt, and this is, being a field knife, most guys like to run a knife like this on your belt, so that will work just fine. But otherwise, yeah, this is a really good sheath. I can't really recommend any changes. In fact, there's even, I was looking for and did find, there's even a drainage hole down there, which is nice. So yeah, I say the sheath is a pretty big win, even not being Kydex. These type sheaths tend to last quite some time. And once again, it fits the knife very well, locks in. So, all right, on to the actual knife talk, knife review. So just some basic specifications of the MAMU. It is a 1095 high carbon, and I think that's a fantastic choice for a field knife. It is, a steel that is going to, gather rust if you're not careful, but they have a pretty decent coating on here, which of course, you can see that, I was able to actually take some of that off in my testing, but I went pretty hard with this knife. So, that's a testament to the powder coat on there. But once again, it's a 1095. And you know, it's not for everyone, but a lot of folks out there like that on their field knives. And it's a good steel. It holds an edge well, but it's also pretty easy to sharpen, especially in the field. It appears to be around 3/16 inch thick, which is pretty standard for a lot of your tops and SE knives out there. So, you know, good thickness for a field knife. You know, not too beefy, but not too thin. You know, good for a lot of various tasks. You know, camp tasks, chopping, slicing, things like that. You know, you got some good, you know, good thickness, but like I said, not too thin, not too thick. You have some nice G10 handle scales. You know, some folks like micarta. To be honest, I like them both. I like the micarta and I like G10. The only thing about micarta is it is much easier to, you know, add in, you know, any sort of grooves after the fact. The G10, you can. It's just, I found it is way more difficult because the G10 is just, you know, is just tougher. It doesn't really absorb any liquids or anything like that, but I've grown quite fond of G10 on field knives, and it really seems to work well with this one. Has that contoured pistol grip style, iconic Sniper Bladeworks handle, which I find very comfortable, works good for chopping and cutting tasks. It's interesting with that kind of, I guess I will say, the hump area is when I was doing some choking up work with this knife. You have to kind of, it's a little different. You have to kind of be wary of, you know, where you're working with your hand, because you can kind of create hot spots. But if you hold this knife just right, it seems to be very comfortable and, you know, work well in the hand. Bow drill divots on there. Not something that I personally use right now, nor I try. Perhaps someday. It's nice to have them. The handle scales are bolted down at 4 points, so very, you know, structurally tight design. You know, those handle scales aren't going to be going anywhere, and they are use the star bits, so you won't really be able to easily take these handle scales off in the field. That's something, you know, to think of as well. That's, you know, once again, it just depends on the situation. Some people like the option to do that. Perhaps if you brought the proper tool, you could do that. But most folks, you know, they either don't want it at all, or they like maybe a flathead or, you know, Allen key on there so they can take these handle scales off in the field. I'm not really one of those folks. I don't do that very often. I usually leave the original factory handles on them. Just, you know, adds that grip, especially if your hands get wet or real dirty. You want that extra micarta or G10 on there for a grip. And there's some light grooves in the handle as well, and that you know, is nice. Definitely improves your grip. Some light jimping up there. Then you have this nice, actually 2 big choils. You have one underneath, you know, the pistol grip area here, and then the larger choil towards the blade. Gives you a really good, solid, positive grip for slicing and cutting tasks, and I enjoyed working with that. And got a little bit of an area here that is not a non-sharpened area, which is good for safety. I've had it on some knives where you can slip, and if you're not careful, you'll cut your finger if the blade continues all the way. I like this right here for safety. Got a nice plain edge, and I'm going to call this a modified drop point because it's got that swedge on the back there. But it's definitely just a good all-around blade style. Very utilitarian, could be good for all sorts of bushcraft and even you know, hunting type for a skinning blade, because you got, you know, that sharp point with the swedge. You could stab into things, and you know, it's also good. You get a good wide blade for chopping. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's just a well-built field knife, good size. Its overall length, I think it's just under a foot. I think it's like 11.5 inches roughly. So good length. Now I want to just talk about a few things that I really, really liked, and maybe a few possible minor changes or anything maybe I didn't like. But once again, overall, this is a really solid field knife, from the knife itself to the sheath. Pretty good system. It's a good chopping knife, cutting, slicing, comfortable in the hand. I like that. handle style. May not be for everyone. Some folks out there like a straight handle. I'm kind of one of those guys where I like a little bit of contour. I've worked with so many bushcraft and survival tactical knives that I've grown quite fond of having at least a little bit of an angle there in the handle, some contours to work with. But I also still don't mind working with straight handles as well. I think it's just once again a preference thing. But the handle worked really well. It's a great knife to actually just chop with, even despite being only 5 inches of cutting edge on there. And yeah, and the weight's pretty good for me too. I think it's a little over a pound. So it's not a super heavy knife, but it's not super light either. It's kind of well balanced overall between the length and the weight, but it worked really well for me. And then, anything that I might want to see, maybe some improvements or changes, possibly maybe just a little bit more light jimping, maybe back here on the end of the handle. I noticed when I was chopping and I would work back on the handle that I was just getting a little bit of slipping, but of course I had my trusty paracord lanyard on there, so I did not lose the knife. But I think I'd like to see a little bit more jimping, maybe on the back end. On the paracord hole here, I would like to see maybe this kind of bevel down, and so the lanyard can kind of rest maybe in more of a notch, if that makes sense. You see how it just really sticks out quite a bit. I like to see some sort of a groove perhaps, so the lanyard kind of lays in the handle. I find that, I I like that aesthetically pleasing. It's kind of a wide handle on the end, and I think it would just work a little better if the lanyard could kind of rest in there. But as for the blade, the blade really is a fantastic design. Now, probably my biggest gripe was I had, and actually I talked to Lance about this, the design of the knife, Lance of Sniper Bladeworks, and he said this portion back here on the spine was jimping. Now, it's interesting, it's kind of squared off, rectangular, and that actually makes that a little rough. And I tried using this a little bit on my cutting, and it wasn't very comfortable, because you also notice the blade kind of thins out in this area, almost like a fuller. And I like the idea behind that, reducing some weight, but I did not like how this felt on my thumb. So to be honest, I would almost rather just see a fuller here and see the tang just the same width. And if there is any jimping here, I would like to see that smoothed out, rounded out. I thought it was a little aggressive. Perhaps I was even concerned if I pushed hard enough that I could, cut my thumb. But maybe that's just me. But I wasn't the biggest fan of that portion. It looks cool, but I just didn't find it very practical when I was doing some push cuts with the knife. I think I was doing a feather stick with it and trying to work with that, and it just wasn't working for me. So I ended up using the portion here on the handle, which is very comfortable to push down on. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty fantastic field knife. It's got great materials, overall great design, just, very, very minor tweaks and changes. And yeah, I think this will be one that folks will really enjoy. So folks, if you enjoyed my review of the MAMU, please give me a thumbs up for this video. And also following this will be that testing footage upload that I was talking about, so you get to see what I did with this knife. I had, like I said, I had a really good time working with this field knife. It was a lot of fun, performed overall very well. And any commentary, I would love to read that and respond to it. I ask that you be pleasant. I try to be nice as well. And also, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please consider that as well. So thank you folks so much for your time.